had a bad week.
All right, so technical difficulties happen. We had some blooper moments here on Inside for Nerds. Hey, you lovely league summoners. I'm the Nightwing, and that is JTH, and we are doing this from our house because apparently we have different houses, right? I think he's just gonna look at me awkwardly through the mic.
Awkwardly.
Okay, so we recorded this video like 2 times. The second time was my own personal opinion because my mic unhooked. And
My own personal opinion. You mean your fault?
I try to
phrase it a little differently.
I hate you. All right, so we want to talk about our mid-season MVPs. We were discussing this last night, and we're gonna do this for North America, China, and Korea as well. But we'll start with EU because I think EU is probably the one with the least MVPs, coming off of like what we've been discussing. So it's really interesting. We don't have any ADCs or any supports on this list. It's really interesting. There's actually 4 players. This is really small because
4. I thought we were doing top 3. What's going on?
I mean, they're kind of all the same.
They're all okay.
They're relatively all the same. It's really like there's not really much. I'm not saying the rest of the players are bad guys. What I'm saying is that these guys substantially stand out amongst the rest in what we see in games. So let's look at the ADC pool. No ADCs made the list in general, but we did consider Upset. I think Upset has shown MVP player quality, but I don't think that he's the player like these guys to take over the game just the way they do if they don't have the team ahead.
Yep. I think that, again, these are the winning conditions of both of these teams. I consider 2 ADCs that would be the winning conditions for their team, which are Hansama and Upset. I do think that if these 2 players get behind, then they do end up losing the game because, again, they are how you win the game on these 2 specific teams. They play through the ADC in the bot lane. But the problem with that is, although I do think they do that, they're reliant more so on their team more so as I don't think they get the the team rolling because if the rest of the team falls behind, Upset and or Hansama are not going to keep the game going. They're capable of doing as much as you like. They require both a slight equal gold, no gold deficit in the bot lane with them, and they also require the rest of their team to be doing pretty decent because they don't reverse the role of the game. All they do is continue up the path at which you're already on because they are not like again they don't like ADCs are only as powerful as the people around them. You can't unless you're substantially better than the rest of the team. You can only play as good as your team is, and on top of the fact like. The beginning half of the season, ADCs were mostly on hit, Kaisas, and all that stuff, and that's really not something I would consider take over the game worthy. I do think they scale really well, but they're essentially just useless until they get 2 to 3 items. So as I think ADCs spike a little bit easier now.
Here's the thing: I think that Upset and Hansama don't have the let's just say the characteristics of Double Lift, in which where Double Lift will get multiple solo kills in his lane with his 2v2 partner. It depends on who he's playing with, but they're not Double Lift where they'll be in bot lane, get a bunch of kills on their own consistently enough to get their team ahead. I think that both those players substantially need help getting to that point. Like we saw the game where Schalke dismantled Fnatic, where a lot of the kills that they did get for Upset and Ignar came off the back of ganks too. So
I'll agree with that because I think that Double Lift is not the same as Upset because Upset's better. But I think Upset's substantially better than him. But the big problem with that is that Core JJ is the bigger I think that you're able to take over a game as an ADC for the most part if like again the ADC role is reliant on most of the team. That's why I think it's harder to get the MVP voting in my opinion for that specific role. It's reliant like you have to have a good enough team. You can't be a good enough ADC on a bad team. Like no matter how good you are as an ADC, if your team's bad, you won't win the game.
Yeah.
That's been the case with Jin Air. It's been the case like Jin Air when they had Teddy. It's been the case with Uzi when he wasn't able to do much on his team on RNG.
Like we saw that last year at Worlds where even though Uzi was good, Cloud9, as a team, if you play better than the ADC, you can still win against him. But
what teams are you talking about?
Oh, like it was shown that even though Uzi was a great individual player, if he couldn't take over the game as an ADC, dependent on how Ning played, then it was shown that, just even if the other parts of the map were doing well, like teams like Vitality and C9 were able to beat them, it wasn't because bot lane was losing.
And then
It was because they couldn't take over the game.
I'm ruler on Gen G now. Like all of these ADCs, I think that I like ADCs and I think they're one of the most useful roles. But in terms of just MVP, like it really is reliant on how good your team is to be able to take over a game because ADCs just really don't have that power until 2 to 3 items.
But the support is different because support we chose absolutely no one.
I think support really can have an impact early on in the game, and I think they're one of the most overpowered roles at the beginning of the season. Yet I don't think anybody insanely impressed me at this role. Maybe like there was no one substantially better than anybody like at their position. There was no one that was like essentially the key integral part to their team. Maybe the bottom supports like Kasing and Vander look like some of the best supports in the league, and they're on terrible teams.
I think Jack Troll has shown glimpses of it in the past few weeks.
I really don't like Jack Troll as a whole because I think that his laning power is just really minimal. I think that he really does not do anything until past laning phase.
But then you have to look at players like Ignar, who has been substantially either rather inconsistent, like he was getting carried for the first few weeks.
It was not the first. It was like the first game or two.
And then like he started doing some of the carrying, and then a few weeks past, he's been getting blasted in lane. So he hasn't shown that Misfits level MVP performance that I've seen right now, but I think he could show it in the future. But nonetheless, we are moving on to he wasn't gonna put him here, but I was. Caps. He's actually the current MVP from last split, who's also been the most consistent and
I don't know about that.
Thriving point of G2. If you're talking about taking over the game, he has consistently taken over the game, except for the one game in which he lost. You can't really count that toward 10 other wins, realistically. He has been playing absolutely incredible, getting multiple solo kills in his lane, pairing up with his jungler, top laner, bot laner, pairing up with dives, invading with his jungler to get Jankos ahead. You look how he just plays lane. He consistently has the CS lead. He consistently is able to be just a consistent carry threat on a team. We also saw that when they were about to lose to XL, he completely crawled it back for them. A lot of the other games that we saw, that even when they were ahead, he was just able to take over the game just substantially. There's just so much about him that he took away from his Fnatic MVP, and he just completely has transitioned it into the G2 lineup, and that's why he's currently here for me. I think he's playing fantastic. I don't think Jizuke or Nukeduck do it to the same level he does it. Like when Caps does it, they win the game. When Jizuke and Nukeduck do it, they can sometimes win the game. That's why
I'm gonna put a reason behind that on the difference in teammates. Also, I do think that the G2 has the single best individual players in the league by far. So
yeah,
that kind
or
of
at
helps.
least top 3.
I don't think anybody's out of the top 2 at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe Perks, but that's pretty much it.
Perks would be like top 4 ADC probably.
Mm-hmm. And that's just because he can play mid laners. His ADC specifically are terrible, besides Lucian.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to point out, I think that Caps is not the most consistent player on his team, which is why I didn't put him at it. I do think Jankos takes that role, but I do think that Caps has been one of the individual players. I'd say he's number 2, like in terms of most valuable player on his specific team. Like I think that he's been one of the biggest turning points in terms of if the team's losing, he has been that variable that's pretty much brought them back into the game. And I think that not really anybody else on his team can say that, but it's consistently, I think, the pressure that Jankos provides to his team, on top of the fact the early game aggression is really dictated by Jankos. I don't think anybody else on the team can really do that besides the lane pressure they get.
But he's getting all that stuff on his own most of the time.
Sometimes.
Jankos mostly dedicates his resources to top and bot. He's getting
I'm not saying Caps isn't doing well in lane. That's not what I'm saying, but the thing about it is Jankos is dictating the pace of the game around the map, whereas Caps is just getting a CS lead. I'm not trying to take away from that, but the level of impact it has is pretty much substantially in Jankos' favor. I think that he has been probably the driving force as to why I think that G2 is an early game powerhouse. And I think that a good helping point is that Caps usually wins this lane, on top of the fact that he is the most mechanically gifted mid laner in the West, probably. But to an extent, I don't know if that matters to the same level at which Jankos plays to, because Jankos has literally defined the style that G2 plays to, and Caps is just facilitating that style to an extreme amount. And I do think this team would not be nearly this. They probably lost 4 or 5 more games without Caps, maybe a little bit less than that, but it still really is on. Like I do think that Jankos has been the driving force for this team so far.
I think when you look at what Caps has been doing for the team, even so, you look at just like the way the other mid laners, or even for North America, play like Bjergsen and Jensen do. They just can either play a specific style that works well with the team, get their teams ahead. You also see that when people dedicate jungle pressure to him, he's able to avoid ganks effectively, thus giving Jankos a chance to dominate and take his resources and dive other lanes or obviously invade. So that's why Caps is here for me. I think he's playing absolutely incredible. And I think that if you look at the other mid laners, why would you have not put in either Jizuke, Febivin, or Nukeduck here?
I'm honestly, again, my ranking is a little bit different than yours, so it's kind of hard. But I think Jukse and Nukeduck both have the same impact, but Nukeduck is a lot less consistent than Caps is. I think that his highs are probably one of the highest in the leagues. We saw him on a Zed when he actually manhandled Caps, but again, we've seen a lot of games where he's fallen behind. I think that he's really not done that often. Again, like a lot of the wins that came off of Nukeduck in terms of just the amount of wins that Origin has got, he's probably the driving force behind that team.
Yeah, he's one of the reasons they got a lot of their wins more recently.
I definitely think he's very much not too far behind the Caps, but I think that Caps, I mean, again, maybe Caps looks a little bit better because his team is doing so well that his mistakes get covered up. But as it stands right now, it seems like a Caps, all on top of the fact that he rarely loses lanes, he's also been the
driving force to his team.
No, that would say
or
I
second
think
second driving force.
No, I think that although like on top of the fact that he doesn't lose lane, he has been pretty much one of the most mechanically gifted. Like there's a lot of things he's consistently good. Where so is Nukeduck is insanely good at some points, and sometimes he loses lane. Rarely happens, but it does happen, and I think it happens a little more often than Caps does. And I do think he has a lot less impact around the map than Caps does. So, and then Jukse, I think he has been insanely good.
Yeah,
I think he's rarely been losing.
I think Jizuke's issue is that he doesn't win the game effectively as Caps does. Like when you see Caps win, he wins the game. Jizuke will win the lane.
I don't want to give too much credit for that because
it's
it's the teammates.
That is true, but we saw that this week around when they were facing Fnatic, he was winning against Nemesis quite well, even when he got ganked. It just really never amounted to anything.
Well, yeah, again, his teammates, like the reason that Caps is able to do this consistently when he gets a lead is because everybody else is getting a lead too. Jankos is doing it, playing out of his mind. Wonder doesn't lose lanes pretty much ever besides like
the games where they gave him Sejuani top.
Yeah,
okay,
there's a few, but for the most part, the bot lane is getting a lot of jungle attention on top of the fact that Perks is a little bit too flexible for the ADCs to be able to deal with. There's just a little bit too much going on around the map, which is why I think he looks a little better than Jukse, but Jukse is not playing much worse.
Yeah.
I'd say.
I think also like I've seen Jizuke kind of it's just from looking at player cams. I've seen him tilt on some player cams and stuff like that, and I think that
I can't base it off that.
Like,
it's just expressions.
Yes, but you also have to factor in that's getting into his head, which is making him play a bit worse. Like we've seen him get dominated by people like Nemesis.
I mean, he's lost a few lanes. I'll give it to that. I think he's probably the second or third best mid lane. I think
he's at least second best mid laner.
I think that's really. I might go to Nukeduck, honestly. I think that Nukeduck is probably getting that second spot, but Jukse is not a far behind third, and I think that all the top three are really close. I think they're all really close first, second, and third right now. I think they've all played at a really substantial level, and they can all compete with each other in lane.
And
but the thing about it is, what?
You're amazing. I love you.
I appreciate that. But
so, is there any other mid laners that stood out to you?
I mean, I'm not doing roles. You just wanted to compare.
All right. So since you wanted to marry this guy, we'll go to Jankos next. So why weren't there any other junglers besides you guys know who we put here beside Jankos? It's not a surprise. It was just self-made. I'm just kidding.
I mean, really the only two insanely good junglers in my opinion. Like everybody else has had really good games. Like we've seen Xerxes pop off. We've seen like Cold be the driving force behind the team that
Origin.
Origin. But he's been one of the most consistent junglers. But again, the top two junglers are the players on their team. Cold has not been he's not that winning condition. I think that he does drive the team, but again, he's had a lot of bad games where so as I think Selfmade and Jankos really haven't. I
See,
think
that's the
that
thing.
on
Selfmade
top,
had bad games, but they mounted it into his team doing something. His
yeah,
team
yeah.
winning.
The thing about it is, well, no, I don't think I'd give him credit for that, even if they won. But the
When
thing about it
Cole had
is,
a bad game, it was just over. Like, we saw the enemy jungler just completely, like, he didn't know what to do if he wasn't either ahead or he was even.
I think that the biggest portion of it is that I think that Jankos, I mean, Cole took a little bit to warm up. I think he started off the season like pretty decent, but not insanely good, and he's kind of warmed up towards the later half of the seasons. And I think he's really proven that he's in the top tier jungler. But Selfmade from game one has been incredible, and I think that Jankos has also been. So I can't really put him on that level until I see him get like consistently do that. But as it stands right now, the top two junglers are pretty far and away the best two.
And they have a MVP level quality performance. Jankos just has it all. I think that what really separated him to be an MVP was just the way he influenced the map differently than even Selfmade, because we've seen him on different picks that worked. We saw Selfmade on things like Aatrox and Karthus that really didn't do any, like, it just wasn't effective. And we saw Jankos do that, and their team not only won, they smashed the other people too. Jankos provides a consistent layer around the map. He himself is also a sufficient carry threat through every single game. I think that what really separates him from Selfmade, because most people are just going to pick Selfmade, so why would you say that Jankos is more MVP than Selfmade?
I mean, again, consistency. If you look just purely on the stats, if you look at the KDA differences, like pretty much everything is in favor of Jankos. First off, I think that again has to do with his teammates, but like there's a definitive style. Yeah, I'm saying that. Of course, like the definitive style again is defined by both of these players. Both of these players define their teams, but Selfmade is again has been a lot less consistent than Jankos. I think that. Like, even though I do think that Jankos does have the better teammates and all that stuff, I don't think that's an indicator of how he's playing. Like, again, he is the team.
Is actually playing good.
He is the stylist. Like, the team style has pretty much just been defined by him. I think that the reason as to why I give Jankos so much credit is because I think that a lot of it, like I think that Selfmade has played really well. But again, like, if we've seen a few of his games, the recent
losses.
Yeah, the games lost have come off the back of his really poor performances. I think he tries to be that superstar that makes the team like accelerate the game, tries to make the team happen. And maybe the team needs it because they're bad, but for the most part, like that he has been some of the definitive reasons as to why they lose. I think that Warlub's kind of stepped it up. So he doesn't have a terrible team around him. He has people he can rely on, but he still plays to that same extent that he played at the beginning of the season, where he has no one to rely on him but himself, and he's trying to make things happen, sometimes to the cost of a game. So I would say that I do think he's a really good player, but Jankos has really not cost his team a game, to my knowledge so far. Like, he really has been playing insanely well, and I'd have to put him quite a bit above him.
That's the thing, that even when G2 lost to Origin, it wasn't even Jankos' fault. It was actually, he did nothing wrong. Selfmade, I think certain picks don't favor him as well as Jankos do. Like I said, Karthus, the Aatrox. I think that Selfmade does get the benefit of the doubt, I think, by a lot of people, because he himself is actually still playing very well. Like, if you look at his individual performance, even when they lost, that team itself would have done nothing without him, though. So you factor in, what if Selfmade is on a team like Schalke? You factor in, what if he's on a team like Origin? They're probably at least top 3. Based off his performance. I think he provides what an MVP does. I think that he's a little bit too experienced right now, but he's still, I'm obviously still going to have him here because he's still been playing incredibly well.
He's playing insanely well, yeah. You can't take away from him.
It's just not as polished as what Jankos is providing. That's what I'm saying. Is that the right word?
I would say that.
You sexy beast.
Okay.
So there's no other junglers. I actually was going to put Memento.
I think that Memento has really just not been playing as well as he played last year. He's had a few bad games to where he's been the detriment to his team, and he's also not been the single catalyst to his team's wins. Like, again, that goes to upset Ignar. I think that.
But there were games where he kind of played like Jankos and Selfmade. He just hasn't done it.
Yeah, but he's just not doing it consistently. Again, Odoamne has been another reason. Like, he has too many people who I think are playing better than him this year for me to really consider Memento.
Oh, and that moves on to the top lane. We got nobody than the Portuguese star, good-looking bearded man himself, Caplachard. Now, I saw him play week 1 against Fnatic. There was a game where he was absolutely absorbing pressure on the Urgot, dodged an ultimate, he got dove, he completely turned it around. We see this guy absolutely style on people in terms of team fights, CSing. He pushes his lead. He not only gets solo kills, he pairs up very well with the team. He is a team shot caller. He absorbs pressure so well. There's no one actually playing anywhere close to his top level MVP performance. Really interesting because people had him underrated as last year, but now he's just basically coming to the forefront as our MVP for the top lane position. The second person I was going to put here is Wonder, but I don't think Wonder is putting out the same performance as Cabochard due to the fact that he has the superstar team. Cabochard is just doing this because he's just doing this. So, what do you feel about Cabochard?
I think that Cabochard, again, it's really up to him and Jukesay for the most part. I think they've been the definitive why this team is winning. But like, although I do think Jukesay has been incredible, I think that Cabochard's just been a little more consistent. He's lost like one lane, and that was to expect. It's just kind of weird, but like he's really not been falling apart. Like I think, like if we've seen the games where the rest of the team fell apart at the beginning of the season against, was it Splice? Yeah, against Splice at the very beginning of the season, we saw Cabochard literally just pretty much keeping Vizicachi at bay, winning the lane hard enough to where they were able to, what's it called, delay until the season, until the game got to the point where the rest of the team
or Vayne was good.
Yeah, like until Jack Troll pretty much lose every single time.
I think what really set me as he's the MVP for top lane was this week. Even though they lost to Fnatic, he played absolutely incredible on his Jarvan pick. The way he team fought, the way he flanked, the absolute way where if he wasn't ahead on his Jarvan pick, they probably would have lost even sooner. I think he single-handedly keeps them in games that they probably already should have lost. And I think that he's one of the reasons why they're still in second and third place too.
He really is. Like his consistency on top of the fact the amount of lane pressure he pretty much generates every single time has been the single reason as to why Vitality has won a few of the games they should have lost.
He can play Urgot the same way he plays Sion, and he just carries. Like, that's ridiculous. So why would you not put Wonder here?
I mean, Wonder's been playing well, but he's probably, the third best player on his team, or so as I think that...
I'm not saying Wonder's been bad, guys. Wonder's had some outstanding performances.
Yes, again, Wonder's had a lot, but he's just not as consistent as... Like, it's not just consistent, but he's also not the...
But he doesn't have to be that, Cabochard.
Yeah, again, he's not leading his team pretty much every time.
And then, who else for the top lane would you have put here? Because Soaz is actually playing pretty well. You would have not said Soaz would have been here for.
Soaz is playing well. I'll give him that.
But why wouldn't Soaz be MVP level?
Soaz, again, he's the driving force behind. Like Soaz again fell off towards the middle part of the season so far. I don't think he's the best. Like he's the best top laner. He's not in the top 3 anymore. Like his consistency is pretty much fallen off. I think he's reverting back to that. I'm
Soaz.
Yeah, pretty much. I do really like the way that Soaz plays, but it's just not to the same level as these two players. I think that Wonder, again, he's winning pretty much every one of his lanes, and I think he's mechanically still insanely good. But he's not the definitive player on this team. He's probably the third leading member of this team at this point. I think that Wonder, although he's the number 2 in his lane, probably he's not his team's leader anymore.
He's just not putting out the same performance as Cabochard is outside of his lane.
I mean, I would say he might be, but again, I think the team's not playing around him anymore, so it's kind of hard to keep being MVP.
Is there any other top laners that people might say that we're forgetting?
Top laners? I mean, those are Odoamne is the other one I'd consider, but
see, that's the thing. He's so inconsistent.
I don't think he's inconsistent. I just think
he's not exactly a lane bully. Like, you don't generate leads off Odoamne like he used to, actually. He's just been kind of stable, kind of solid. He's becoming like the impact of his league. He's just a solid top laner that can do what he needs to do, but not be anything more than that. I think these other guys have just shown that they can do that still while being that solid rock for their team as well.
Yeah, exactly. He's taken the role of being the leader of his team, and I don't think that... although I do really appreciate the way that Wonder's playing, he's not the reason his team's winning anymore. That's not his role. That's not the way he's playing. So
Vizicachi, oh god,
Vizicachi is not good at all in my opinion.
Not anymore. He used to be great, man.
He used to be great, but that's just not his team. He's not great anymore.
Maybe,
Like
maybe it's just a Splice thing because Oldawamne left Splice and he became
exactly.
good.
Like they've pretty much switched identities at this point.
Expect. I feel like if Expect was on a better team, he would be close to MVP. Well, at least in our opinion. For Expect, because Expect isn't playing bad, but won't really amount to much. So that's it for our mid-season MVPs for the LEC. Leave your MVP mid-season players in the comment section below. Is there any other things you want to say before we close the video? Was there any player that you just couldn't think of that you thought of at the end of the video?
I did not think of anybody.
So you're not going to put Reckless here?
The moment Reckless stopped sucking, maybe.
Oh, dang. You're throwing shade.
Now, Reckless has had a few good games recently, so I can't say that anymore, but he really did suck at the beginning of the season.
Now, why isn't he Q an MVP?
Is that the end of the video?
It is now. Haha. See you guys later. I can't say like, comment, subscribe because he gets mad.
It's just like, I don't like these catchphrases, and this is how we end it. Just whatever.
That's all the time here on Inside for Nerds. See that like a TV show ending, right?
No, just shut it off and call them losers. That's how it works.
That's all the time here on Inside for Nerds. JTH and Nightwing signing out. Peace out, human beings. Right? That's how you end it? Or you say losers?